السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات ليستخلفنهم في الأرض كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم وليمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم وليبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا ومن كفر بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الفاسقون وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأطيعوا الرسول لعلكم ترحمون لا تحسبن الذين كفروا معجزين في الأرض ومأواهم النار ولبئس المصير يا أيها الذين آمنوا ليستأذنكم الذين ملكت أيمانكم والذين لم يبلغوا الحلم منكم 3 مرات من قبل صلاة الفجر وحين تضعون ثيابكم من الظهيرة ومن بعد صلاة العشاء 3 عورات لكم ليس عليكم ولا عليهم جناح بعدهن طوافون عليكم بعضكم على بعض كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات والله عليم حكيم وإذا بلغ الأطفال منكم الحلم فليستأذنوا كما استأذن الذين من قبلهم كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته والله عليم حكيم صدق الله العظيم. In the previous ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about 2 different groups, the people of Iman and Munafiqeen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned how Munafiqeen, they keep on making fun of the people of Iman and how they keep on plotting against the people of Iman. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising the people of Iman His help, that regardless of what these munafiqeen think about you, what they say about you, a day would come when you would be seen as rulers in the world, as people in power. The first application of this ayah was Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, and then of course those who would come after Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een and follow the steps of Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. So let's look at the promises that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made in this ayah, and then we'll see the application of it. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah has promised those of you who believe and do good deeds, لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, that He will make them the rulers in the land. كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, just as He made those before them. وَلَيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. That was the first promise. Second promise, وَلَيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ, and He will certainly establish for them the religion that He has chosen for them. The third promise, وَلَيُبَدِّلَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ خَوْفِهِمْ أَمْنًا, and He will certainly give them peace in exchange of fear that they have to go through. Or we can say that He will certainly give them peace after the fear that they are going through. The condition, يَعْبُدُونَنِي لَا يُشْرِكُونَ بِي شَيْئًا. They worship me, ascribe no partners to me. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Whoever will disbelieve after that, they are the transgressors. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, and establish salah. وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ, and pay the zakah. وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولِ, and obey the messenger. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, so that you may receive the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise to the people of Iman. And the promise says, لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Number one, He will give them power. In the land, there will be the rulers. Number two, يُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمْ. He will establish this deen for them. Number three, the fear will go away, the fear of the enemies will go away, and they will be living in peace. So these are the promises that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made. Who the promise is made to? وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. He is promising this to those who believe, who have Iman, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do the good deeds. This ayah, of course, at the time when it was revealed, the first people that the ayah would apply to would be those that were there at the time of the revelation of this ayah. Because the ayah says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ. Allah promised those of you who believe and do the good deeds. You, the first reference to that would be Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, and then it would apply to people who would have Iman and A'malus Salihah. Let's look at how this ayah applied to Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was in Makkah Mukarramah, before Hijrah, we know that they were living in a state of fear. It was always a fear, and in fact a type of fear about which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, لَقَدْ أُخِفْتُ فِي اللَّهِ وَمَا يُخَافُ أَحَدٌ. People scared me so much in the path of Allah that no one had to go through that much fear. This is the Prophet of Allah. He says, I had to go through so much fear that no one has to go through that situation, through this much fear ever in that person, in his life. We know people going through situations where as soon as someone knocks at the door, everyone's heart will start beating. That who could be this? Why someone is knocking at my door? Especially people living in areas where the war is going on. That could be some army people. They're knocking at the door, they will come in. As soon as phone rings, people will start having that fear that we are going through some situation, I don't know who's calling. So people have to go through that, all of that fear. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, وَمَا يُخَافُ أَحَدٌ. The way I had to go through, the situations I had to go through, no one had to go through those type of situations. Imagine the worst situation of fear a person had to go on the hands of enemies. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, I had to go through worse than that. Imagine the time when the kuffar of Quraysh, day and night, are plotting to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The time he walks out of his house, there is no surety, there is no guarantee that he would be coming back to his home. His wife Khadija radiallahu anha has passed away. His uncle Abu Talib have died. His main supporters are gone. But the kuffar are still doing whatever they can to hurt him. Now when he leaves home in the morning, there is no one to take care of Fatima radiallahu anha. There is no one to take care of Ruqayya radiallahu anha. His daughters are in the house. And we read in some of the narrations, sometimes they beg him not to leave the house because of the situation in Makkah Mukarramah. That day and night people are plotting to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That was the state of fear that they had to go through in Makkah, and we know the Sahaba, the torture Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in had to go through. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to Medina Munawwara. When he migrated to Medina Munawwara, initially Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in thought that now we won't have to go through all of that. Now we will be living in peace. But as soon as the news spread that Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam arrived Medina Munawwara, and him and other Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in Muhajirin are living in Medina now, the whole Arabia turned against Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and then even the Jews started plotting against Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So now, not only the people of Makkah, here the whole Arabia and a very strong power in that area of Yahud, they all got together against Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There is hadith in Musnad Ahmad. One of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in says that in those days after Hijrah, initially we thought we will be living in the best position now, best situation, at least we will have some peace of mind. But he said now it got so bad that night time when we go to sleep, we used to keep our weapons on, that at any time we could be attacked in Medina Munawwara. We used to sleep with our weapons. So one day they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasulullah, is there a time, are we going to see the time when we will be at least able to sleep at least for one night with peace of mind? No fear of enemy? Imagine the question. Look at the situation. This question tells us the situation that they were going through. Ya Rasulullah, would we have a night when we would be able to sleep with peace of mind and no fear of enemies? At that time this ayah was revealed. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah promises those of you who believe and do the good deeds, لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, that He will give them the power in this land, just as He gave it to the people of Iman before you. وَلَيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ, and He will establish this deen on the earth that He has chosen for them. وَلَيُبَدِّلَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ خَوْفِهِمْ أَمْنًا, and He will give them peace after the fear that they have to go through. So this was the promise made to those Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in in that situation at that time. Situation started getting little better towards the 9th year of Hijrah. Makkah Mukarramah was conquered in the 8th year of Hijrah. So gradually situation started getting better. 7th year of Hijrah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam conquered Khaybar. That was the main center for Yahud. Next year, 8th year of the Hijrah, he took over Makkah Mukarramah, which means the power of the Arabs was destroyed over there because everyone was looking at what happens with Quraysh. Although after that, the people of Taif and Hunayn thought that they are stronger than the Quraysh and they can still fight Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And right after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam conquered Makkah Mukarramah, the Battle of Hunayn took place. Gradually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made everything easy for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and all of the enemies started going away. In the 9th year of Hijrah, now it was a time when you could see that they had some peace of mind. During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Islam had spread in the Arabian Peninsula, Makkah, Medina, and all of that area, all the way up to, they call it Najd. For our understanding, we may say nowadays, as we may call it, the area of Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. Up to that area, Islam had spread in those days. And then we know that Khaybar was under the Islamic control. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the 9th year, he went all the way to Tabuk, which means the boundary of the Romans. Tabuk was part of Syria at that time, the Roman Empire. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went all the way up to there, challenging the superpower of the time, the Romans. No war took place, and he came back. But with this now, at least they had a lot of peace of mind in Medina Munawwara, that people living around Medina, or Arabs generally, they would not think of attacking Medina Munawwara anymore. In the 10th year, Islam had gone to Yemen also. So, in Arabia, and all the way up to Yemen, the whole Yemen was Muslim. Bahrain was Muslim. This is before Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away in the 11th year of Hijrah, in the month of Rabi'ul Awwal. Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een chose Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu to be the Khalifa. When the news started spreading about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's death, some people turned away from Islam. Some people started claiming the Nabuwah wal-iyazu billah because they thought it's a good opportunity to take over this position. And some others, the superpowers of the time, they started planning to attack Muslims in Medina Munawwara because they are disturbed. It's a good time to go and destroy them. So we see that now there are three main forces that are plotting against the Muslim Ummah of that time. Murtaddeen, those who turned away from Islam. Number two, those who had their personal benefits, like Nabuwah and whatever. And number three, the superpowers of the world, so that they can take the opportunity of destroying Islam. If a person would keep that situation in mind, and then on the other hand looks at this ayah, we can see that this is what made Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een stand for their position. and they knew Allah's promise will be fulfilled, regardless of how much strength the enemies have. Just one of these enemies, if a person would just look at the situation, one of these enemies was enough to destroy the whole power of Islam of that time. And here there are three of them, and especially when it comes to the superpower of the time. Their power, their strength, their armies, everything is much more powerful than what it's there in Medina Munawwara. We don't want to go into the detail of what happened in Medina and how Sahaba had to deal with those situations. Inshallah, we'll talk about it in our series of the Seerah and then the Khulafa al-Rashideen. But here I'm just trying to explain this ayah, how Allah's promise was fulfilled. So now Sahaba are surrounded from every side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped, and gradually they started taking over their enemies. So they took care of those who turned away from Islam. Then they started taking care and fighting those who claimed the Nabuwah. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu was Khalifa for 2.5 years only. During these 2.5 years, he managed to destroy or stop all the enemies from even thinking about attacking Medina Munawwara. No one would even think after that of attacking Medina Munawwara. So up to this time now, because they thought there is some weakness there, people are turning away, and Muslims are disturbed, Sahaba are disturbed, so it's an opportunity that we can go and attack, but now even the superpowers don't want to think that. Not only this, towards the end of his Khilafah, the Muslim armies were standing at the boundaries of the Roman Empire, challenging them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu the vision to see that the most suitable person for Khilafah after him would be Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. And he chose Umar radiallahu anhu, the Khalifa who did not want to be the Khalifa. During the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu, we see that both of the superpowers were gone. During the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, if we compare the power of Muslims with the power of those superpowers of the time, there was no way for a person to even think that these people can go and fight those superpowers. It was nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. And they also based everything on the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their iman. So during the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu, the whole of Roman Empire was under the Muslim control. Egypt, the whole country, was under the Muslim rule. And most of the Persian Empire, which means the power was gone, but they had a small area where Kisra lived, their king. That area was still in their control, but not where he used to, where he had his the capital of during the time. Of course, that was under the Muslim control. So most of the Persian Empire was also under the Muslim control, and it was not considered to be a power anymore. So during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, Islam gone all the way there, and now at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, we can say that this Khilafah became the superpower of the world. There was no power in the world that could challenge the Muslim Khilafah of that time. Next was Uthman radiallahu anhu. During his Khilafah, Islam went in west all the way up to Spain. And In the east, they were knocking the doors of China. And finally, there were areas of China that were paying the tax to the Muslim government, which means accepted the Islamic rule. But they did not become Muslim, that okay, we will accept your rule and we will continue doing what we used to do, and we will keep on paying you the tax from our area. So that you protect them, the Muslim army will protect them, and Muslim rule will be there, will be established there, which is called jizya. So this was during the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those of you who have iman and do the good deeds, Allah has promised them, لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, that He will give them the power in this land. كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, just as He gave it to those who were before them. What do we understand from all of this? Main thing we see from this ayah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that the Khilafah of Khulafa al-Rashideen was something that is considered as a gift to the Ummah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised the people of Iman of that time. People are around Sahaba, now just imagine the situation. People are around Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They are in the state of fear. The question comes, can we ever live a night without having the fear of enemies? Can we sleep with peace of mind without having to carry our weapons during the night time? And the ayah was revealed, saying, those of you who have iman and do the good deeds, I promise that you would have power in the land, and the fear will go away, and Iman, Islam will be established everywhere in the land. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the time of Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, as we see, that fulfilled this promise. So, who are the people of Iman and A'mal al-Salihah? Of course, Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, and those who were ruling were in the highest position of Iman and A'mal al-Salihah. That was the criteria. And this shows that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu was the highest in that criteria of Iman and A'mal al-Salihah, and therefore he became the first Khalifa. The person who was next in that criteria, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he came next in that criteria, and he became the second Khalifa, and Khilafah came according to this criteria, Iman and Amal al-Salih. So now, the ayah is so clear if we believe that Allah fulfilled that promise, because we don't see that thing being established in this way after Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. Who can we name a person after the time of Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, from the Khulafa, from the kings, from the rulers, who would be on the level of Iman and A'mal al-Salihah the way Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in were? And where we can say that this ayah would really fit, if the ayah did not fit on